Alright, hey guys, Theodore Burns here, lap walkthrough for the RRI League. This is the Corvette C6R GT1 car around the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course. This is in our practice race last night, ran a 118.059. And so with that, it's right around for a lap. Alright, so a little bit of a sloppy last corner there, but here we go. So, starting off, turn one, my break point for this is usually somewhere in between the 2 and the 100, probably about 175 to 150. I'm just riding out in the top of 4th gear. I don't want to shift up to 5th here. So there we go, about the 175. Start braking at the 200 on the cold tires, and it's just a nice straightforward brake into the corner. And I like to try and stay in 4th gear through the first corner. It helps you roll a little bit more speed, but if you're having trouble turning into the corner, you can go down to 3rd, but you just have to get on throttle a little bit sooner, a little bit of maintenance throttle to try and keep your speed up around there. It's a little bit slower going to 3rd, but if for sure start off in 3rd gear till you're comfortable going through here in 4th. So it's really important to try and not get the left side tires up onto the curbing here for the pit exit. If you do get the left side tires up on here, it's really easy to step out the rear end of the car because you lose a lot of grip and you'll end up spinning off the track. So you want to get nice and close to it. You can kind of hover the left front right on the inside edge here at the end of the curbing, but ideally you do not want to touch this at all. And so you notice once I even get to the curbing there, it's like a late apex to the corner, and I'll start to get back on throttle as I drive through the corner. You notice getting full throttle right there, about half a car length before the end of that curbing, and just keep that full throttle all the way through the corner. As you track out, just unwind the hands real slow, and be careful not to dip the right side tires onto the grass there, otherwise it's going to get real slippery real fast. Right, so play back through turn one more time. It's just like last week, it's a lot of patience getting on throttle there in turn one, just letting the car coast. Alright, so coming up to the keyhole, this one I usually like to start off the run braking at about the 300 board. It just comes in your much more controlled approach. You don't want to be pushing it too deep because the track really drops off and we'll end up sliding the car. And as we all know by now, the Corvette does not like sliding. But as we get later in the run, tires get a lot hotter. I can start to push this in a little bit more, braking probably about the 275 marker. Still just about 300 there, even on this hot lap. So here I'm going to come all the way down to 2nd gear, and how I like to take the keyhole is I'll start over here on the left-hand side of the track. And as I finish my braking and start to trail it in, I'm going to kind of take it, so this is like a 180-degree, bend all the way around. There's a lot of elevation change, and so how I like to deal with the elevation change is to make it kind of like a 90 here, and then follow the curbing around on exit. So you notice as I start to turn into the corner, it's an extremely smooth turn in. I'm not jerking the wheel or turning in too much, otherwise it's going to slide the car, let the rear end step out, and I'm carrying just that little bit of trail brake. And I'm turning in here, trying to get this 90 degree and get down to the curbing right as it kind of crests over the hill before it starts to drop off. That's about halfway through the 180 degree corner there, and that's about finishing my my 90 degree corner. And I want to make sure I get the right side tires right up as close to this curbing as possible. So as we see right there, I hit the apex, and notice how I have a real constant steering angle, and I'm just letting the car coast here. As I start to go downhill, I'm going to let the weight kind of transfer a little bit here, and this is extremely important to hesitate to get on throttle here. If you get on throttle too soon, because it's downhill, we're just going to end up pushing wide, and we'll end up over here in the gravel. So in order to try and stay on this inside curbing all the way around the end of the corner here, I'm really going to wait to get on throttle. And if you do it correctly, you'll notice that even though you're not getting on full throttle until you're completely tracked out and on the straightaway, you'll end up gaining time because of taking the nice tight line on exit here. If you're taking it a car width off or taking a real wide line and trying to get to full throttle here and straight line it, you're still not going to end up gaining as much time down the straight. So you notice here, just get that little bit of maintenance throttle, but notice I have to come back out of it, and I need to put in a little bit more steering. So that was too soon on my part, and I just needed to hesitate a little bit more. Notice how I'm still almost completely through the turn and still haven't tipped into the throttle here. Still keeping the right side tires right on the curbing there. Now I've gotten all the way through, and the rear end started to take a set as it settles down at the bottom of the hill. So the rear end's kind of, you can kind of feel the rear end move over and settle down here. So that's my key. I can get into throttle. And again, it's a very smooth application. Notice only about 55–60% here as I come out of the corner because I don't want to drive it straight off the track here. I don't want to get into the TC too much. And now that I unwind my hands, now I can go to full throttle. Notice I'm completely out of the corner and over here by the exit curbing by the time I'm actually on full throttle. And this is I believe the fastest time I was through sector 2 in that session there. Yeah, real close to it. So that's how you take the keyhole in this car with this setup. One more time in real speed. Alright, just straight line it down the backstretch. Okay. Coming up here into the madness section of Mid-Ohio, my brake marker for this corner, it's really important not to push this one too deep because we go off a huge hill here, and it's a really tight corner, and so it's really easy and really deceiving. It's really easy to overcook this and drive it in too deep. And so the keyhole you can get away with, pushing the brake point a little bit and sliding the car. This corner you cannot. So it's pretty strict braking at the 400 board. I think the deepest I've ever been able to go is about the 380, not quite even 375, and that's using a lot of trail brake and the car is sliding, and I'm losing time on exit. So you notice right there, braking right at the 400 board. So all the way up in 6th gear, getting those late downshifts, nice straight brake zone. Now as I start to trail off the brakes and come down to 3rd gear here, I'm going to start to turn into the corner. Notice I carry just that little bit of trail brake, and I'm not flicking the car in. It's a really slow, smooth turn into the corner. If I flick the steering at all, it's going to get the rear end to step out, and we're going to lose a lot of traction and start to slide the car and lose a lot of time. Notice I'm carrying just that touch of trail brake, trying to keep all my weight on the nose and keep the car just nice and balanced, nice and settled. Don't want to upset it, lift up either side or do anything. Now this curbing here, you can clip quite a bit of this curbing. You don't have to clip it. You can come right up to it, but you want to try and get as close to this as possible. So in this particular lap, I end up driving up over it, and you can do this just fine as long as you keep these left side tires on the black down here. You won't run into an off track or a 1X. So after I climb up over the curb there, the car's nice and rotated, and I can start to get back into throttle. but it's not quite full throttle. It's again, I'm trying not to get into the TC and start to jitter, upset the rear end. I'm trying to just keep it real smooth. Notice I'm still in third gear coming out of here, but I'm going to brake early for the left-hand corner here, and see, brake right there, right as I unwind my hands and start to get them back to the other side is right when I'm braking and coming down to second gear. And this is just a real light brake application. And basically the line I'm looking to try and take here is to get right down onto this curbing here on the left-hand side of the track as we crest up over the hill. I don't want to be pushing wide. I don't want to drive the car in and turn it. I want to try and stay as tight to this as possible, and so I can have nice straight hands and have the car completely turned by the time we do crest over that hill, because this car's going to get really light. So carried just a little bit of trail brake there, and I'm just kind of coasting it uphill and letting the natural terrain slow the car down. Staying in second gear, and again, it's nice smooth turning. Cannot overemphasize how smooth you have to be on the steering wheel in this car. So I crest up over the hill. I give it just that little bit of maintenance throttle, but you have to be really careful because as we crest over here and we have to try and turn down, the rear end's going to lift up and kick out. And so you notice I unwind my hands extremely quickly here as I can feel the rear end start to get light, and I almost anticipate the rear end stepping out because you will get some wheel spin. Even with the traction control, you will get a little bit of wheel spin here if you keep your hands nice and tight. So notice right here I give it a quick unwind my hands real fast. I'm not worried about trying to stay on the left side of the track. I just want to get up over the hill and get back into power as soon as possible. So then once the car's landed and settled, I can get back into full throttle, and now my hands are straight and I'm driving. I want to try and get to the left-hand side of the track here. This is another corner, the right-hander here, that you cannot overshoot the brake zone into. You're not going to gain any time. You want to have a nice tight line and a tight exit on the right-hand side of the track coming out of this corner. And all that starts with the braking here and making sure that we brake early enough to make this corner. So there we go. I was just in the top of second gear, just let it ride up right up to close to the red line, and then brake it back down using all the engine brake as I can in second gear. Trail brake down, and again, like I said, I want to take this corner nice and tight. This is really important for the next couple of corners coming up. Is starting it right here with hitting this apex, and so that's getting the right side tires up onto this curb and using that curb to kind of rotate. So once I've gotten onto the curb, hit that apex, I can start to feed into the throttle. Again, very slow throttle application. Because I'm only about half throttle, 50% as I'm coming out of the corner. Now again, like I said, I want to keep the car over to the right-hand side of the track. I don't want to be any farther over than mid-track coming out of the corner here. And so you notice I still haven't even gotten a full throttle because I'm so concerned with keeping the car over here on the right-hand side of the track. I still haven't gotten all the way up to that full throttle until now. Notice my steering wheel, I've started to actually tip into the left-hand corner here before I even got to my full throttle. So it's just waiting, getting the car completely set up before even getting into the throttle. And this particular sector is where you can make or break your lap. These couple of corners right here. So I want to try and turn it in early and straight line it up over this hill so I can hit the apex of the first right-hander. So basically I want to try and draw a straight line from this apex to the next apex and try and drive the car as straight as possible through there. So a lot of that starts with the curb here, and I want to hit right here, right in this corner where the curbing ends, and there's this little chunk of grass. I want to get the left side tire to kind of hover right over that. You notice I actually kind of dip out of the throttle a little bit here to help the car turn, and so I don't get any wheel spin as I crest up over the hill here. But I'm still stay on throttle the entire time. I don't completely back out, and I don't hit the brakes ever. So notice right now as I come up to the crest, I've straightened my hands out so I have the car nice and straight as I crest up over the hills. So when it lands, nothing wonky happens. See, it's a real straight wheel, and still only about 75% throttle as I crest up over the hill as the rear end gets really light. Don't want any wheel spin. Right now as the car settled and planted, I can start to steer into the corner, and I can give it a little burst of full throttle to keep my speed up into this next section here. So I'm able to drive this in really deep here and into this corner, but I may advise for some of you guys to start braking somewhere around now. But it's really hard to keep the car from sliding the rear end out, and a lot of that has to do with the hands, how smooth the steering is and how straight the steering is as you go to apply the brakes. Let's come back into cockpit mode as we're in top of third gear. Coming through here. I get the right side real close to this first apex, but at this curbing here, I'm starting to kind of bail out of the throttle. It's a slow bail, and here we go, just a real light brake application. It's only about 25% brake force, and you notice that as I'm on the brakes to try and keep the rear end from sliding out, I have real straight hands. Just trying to tip the car just a little bit to the right, but I want to end up over here pretty close to this curb. I don't want to actually hit it, but I want to get the left side tires pretty close to it so I can set up in straight line over the next crest here best I can. You notice it's still just an extremely light brake application as I'm slowing for the corner and just working my hands. It's braking, trying to keep the hands straight as possible, not flicking the car or anything. So notice I keep in a little bit of trail brake there now as I start to turn into the corner, and I want to try and get my right side tires onto this curbing, get like a nice late apex, and have the right side tires kind of follow up over the curbing here. And notice that the car is going to kind of walk itself over as I'm cresting up over the hill, and it's really going to step out as soon as I crest over the hill. So I want to try and have the car straight and pointed onto the next little straight by the time I crest over this hill. So you notice now I downshift down to second gear through here. Still just that little bit of trail brake to try and bring the nose over. And here I'm hitting that nice light apex on the curb here. And now I like to start to tip into throttle just a little bit to try and get just that little bit of forward momentum and have a feeling for how my rear traction is coming up over the hill here. It will get into the TC a little bit, but again, I don't want to be sitting here spinning the tires, so it's just real slow application. You can short shift up to third gear here. That'll really help you get to throttle a little bit sooner. But you notice as soon as I crest up over the hill, I get nice straight hands again. I don't want to be cresting over the hill with my hands turned. And now I crest over that hill, and because I've taken such a tight line and a late apex on the uphill, I've ended up only about mid-track. If you take an early apex onto that uphill corner, you're going to end up way over here right on the curbing, if not on the grass, as you crest up over the hill, and that's really hard to get back to throttle, and it's unpredictable, and if you do end up hitting the grass, you're going to have a bad time in spinning out. So it's really important to try and get that late apex as you crest up over the hill, so you can end up about mid-track here. And now I'm working the rear tires as it crests up over the hill, and once they've landed and I have traction again, I can get back to full throttle and now steer the car out of it. Alright, so that was quite a few corners there, all of the madness section of Mid-Ohio. So we'll go back through, play all this through one more time in real speed, and I really want you guys to pay attention to the throttle application over the crests of the hill. Notice you remember straight hands as you crest over the hill, and the throttle application, and just how to not spin the tires coming up over the hills. All right, coming up to the last couple corners of the lap. Starting with this left-hander here, it's really blind and hard to see. You like to hug the right-hand side of the track here, coming up right near the top of fourth gear. And I'm going to end up braking just a little bit before the 2 board here, about the 225, right as I'm right up on the wall here. But notice I got my hands straight as I hit the brakes, but it's just a real light tap because we do have still a bit of uphill here, which will slow us down as we come into the corner as we're coasting. And so I start to turn into the corner as I trail brake off. Again, this one's also really easy because we're cresting up over the hill to drive a little bit too wide, so I like to try and get as early a turn in as possible. And early turn in means you have to get your braking done sooner, which means just start backing up that brake point there. Don't try and push it too deep. Don't go to the 200 board and then try braking and turn into the corner. It's just going to upset the rear end of the car. And remember, that's the hardest thing with Corvette is keeping that rear end planted, not sliding it. So I'm going to get the left side tires right here onto the curbing, waiting until I get to that apex to start to feed into throttle ever so slowly, knowing that the car, it's going to just kind of walk itself over to the right-hand side of the track. But I'm okay with that. Coming out of here, it's nice and predictable. Wait until I get my hands straight, give it a nice little burst, full throttle. Gonna turn it over and try and keep it right here on the right side of the track. You'll notice it kind of, right after the curbing ends, there's a nice little curve to the right, and then the track is pretty straight right there. So I'm going to follow it around and get onto that straight, the little straight bit as we're approaching into the corner. And right as I get to the end of that curbing there, I'm going to turn my hands straight and apply the brakes in a nice straight brake zone as I crest up over the hill and come into the last corner. Again, it's not a heavy brake application. It's only about 25–30%, but I'm going to come down to second gear. And as I crest up over the hill and try and drive it in here, I'm almost trying to like V this corner off. I'm going to kind of drive it in, turn the car, and then accelerate out. Notice I'm just coasting here all the way around the corner. Just a little touch of trail brake to help keep my nose down. And notice I'll oftentimes just be tapping the brake here as I come around. And so we see this curb start to come into focus here. And so essentially I want to try and hit a really late apex around this curb, somewhere over here, like right at the exit of the curb. And if I can get the right side of the car right on the curbing right there, then it's a nice real straight shoot out the left-hander and onto the pit straight. So it's just little taps of trail brake, no more than 5% to keep the nose of the car down, and just turn it into the corner just that little bit more. But notice I've just been coasting a lot, and this will feel like an eternity, just like a Coda. Just coast, 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 all the way up until I get the car just right up onto this curbing here. I can start to get in throttle, and it's a nice slow application. Starting to build speed. Notice I still have all my steering input into it. It's only about half throttle as I get right here to the end of the curb. Right side tires right on the curb. Now that I got the car pointed straight, I can see it straight, and the left-hander there. I've unwound my hands. That's when I can get to full throttle. And now I can start to drive the car out. Because we're kind of coming downhill here, I want to be careful not to flick the wheel too much and upset the rear end. And so there's kind of a little double apex here. I'd say 1 and 2 on this curbing I like to try and hit. In this particular lap, I kind of missed the second one, and that's why I go a little bit wide here on exit. But it's just being real smooth with the steering here, not pitching it in too much, not putting in too much angles so you don't slide the car. If you do it correctly, you can keep this full throttle all the way down the hill here, and you won't end up sliding the rear end a little bit or sliding the front end, walking it over. It'll hug the track real nicely. Still just checking myself just a little bit there with the throttle because now I'm coming wide. And so right here should have nice straight hands up on the curbing and just drive it out. I always had lapse of mind and just drove it right off track there, but I was able to keep my foot in it, and this did not in fact give me a 1X. Still had the left side tires on the track, so this was a clean lap, even though I kind of jump across there. And that's the 18:05.9. So I'll play back through the last section here one more time, real speed. Right, so there we have a lap around Mid-Ohio. So I'll see you guys out there probably tonight for the practice and for sure tomorrow for the race. So good luck. And again, remember, slow throttle application, smooth hands, early brake. And with that, see you guys out there.